I live on my family's ranch. We're not a massive industrial operation, just a modest place with enough cattle to make a living. Times have been tough lately with hay prices through the roof, so we needed to sell some cows just to afford feed for the others. I put up listings on Facebook Marketplace and a few other sites. We had different groups of cows, some ready for sale to other ranchers, and others we'd separated into a different pen because they were heading to the butcher this summer. A woman messaged me asking if she could come by and look at our cattle. We went back and forth about what kind of cows we had available and agreed on a time for her to visit. When the day came, she didn't show up. No call, nothing. Later that evening, I got a message apologizing for missing our appointment and asking if she could come the next day instead. I told her I'd be busy in the morning doing ranch work but could meet her in the afternoon. She agreed, and we settled on that plan. The next day, I was out running hay to our cattle in the north pasture. When I pulled into our driveway around noon, I noticed an unfamiliar car parked there. As soon as I stepped out of my truck, a woman walked up to me. She demanded to know where I had been, her tone impatient. I explained that she was early and reminded her that I mentioned I would be doing work with the cows, but added that I could spare some time to show her around quickly. I tried to be polite even though she was annoyed despite being the one who showed up unannounced and earlier than we'd discussed. I led her over to the pens where we kept the cattle for sale. She pointed to our separate pens and asked why the cattle were divided, suggesting they should all be together. I explained that the separated group was being fattened up for butchering this summer. Her face twisted into an expression of disgust. She accused me of torturing these animals, her voice rising. I'm not one to judge someone who's against animal abuse. In fact, I'm with them. Some big industrial operations do treat their animals horribly, and it's a problem. I pride myself on treating our animals well. Cows provide us with food, so I make sure they're taken care of properly until the end. But what was this lady expecting? She came to a cattle ranch. Of course, some cows are going to end up as food. I told her that our cows were treated well, and that we ensure their deaths are quick and painless. I then redirected her attention to the cows she was actually here to see. She scoffed and followed me. I led her to the pen with the cows we were selling. It was then I noticed she had a small trailer hitched to her car, barely big enough for one cow. At this point, she called out to her car, and a young boy, maybe 10 years old, hopped out and ran over to us. That's when I realized what was happening. This wasn't a fellow rancher looking to buy cattle. This was a suburban mom buying her kid a pet cow. She asked her son which cow he liked, encouraging him to make a selection. The boy pressed his face against the fence, scanning the herd before pointing to a young calf that was still nursing from its mother. I explained to them that if they wanted that particular calf, they would need to purchase the mother as well, since the calf was too young to be weaned. The woman questioned this requirement. I confirmed that both would need to be purchased together and mentioned that since the cow was a protective mother, it might be better to look at other options. The boy started whining, insisting he wanted that specific calf. His mother backed him up, explaining that her son wanted the cute small one, and she didn't want anything too large. I suggested they look into miniature cows instead and offered to provide contact information for sellers who specialized in them. She dismissed this idea, emphasizing that she was already here at our ranch. The child then asked his mother if he could pet the cow. I immediately told him no. Despite my warning, the woman told her son he could go ahead, questioning what the big deal was, since he just wanted to pet the cow. This woman had no idea about the first rule of cattle. Be aware of your surroundings. If you see a cow with a calf, and the mom is alert and defensive, you stay away. This kid was too young to understand, but his mother should have been looking out for him. The mother of that calf was one of our most temperamental cows. She wouldn't tolerate anyone near her baby. Before I could stop him, the kid had squeezed under the fence panel and was in the pen. I immediately turned to grab my cattle prod from my truck. A cattle prod is just a long rod that delivers a light shock to the cattle, similar to a shock collar for dogs, just on a stick so you can keep your distance. While I was grabbing it, the kid approached the calf. The mother cow was giving all the warning signs, head up, ears forward, pawing at the ground. The kid got close to the calf and it got spooked. Unlike horses that kick backward, cows kick to the side. The calf kicked out and caught the kid square in the side of his head. He fell over and started screaming. His mother started screaming too. A part of me felt vindicated seeing this woman face the results of ignoring my warnings. But with all the screaming, the rest of the cattle were getting agitated. I grabbed my cattle prod, rushed into the pen, and just as the mother cow was about to charge the fallen kid, I managed to herd her away. I scooped up the crying child and got him out of the pen, handing him back to his mother. I told them they needed to leave the property immediately and suggested they take the boy to a doctor. The woman began blaming me for the incident, claiming I should have had the animals better contained and threatening legal action. She kept yelling as I helped them to their car, but I tuned her out. I can't stand people who think they know better than everyone else, who ignore basic safety warnings and then blame others when things go wrong. As they drove away, I checked on the cows. The mother and calf were still agitated, but calming down. I spent the next hour soothing the herd, thinking about how lucky that kid was. It could have been worse. 2 weeks later, I got a letter from a lawyer claiming damages for the attack on their property. I sent over the footage from our security cameras that showed the woman allowing her child into the pen against my instructions. Never heard from them again. I still sell cows, but now I make everyone sign a waiver before they get near the pens. I need to tell you about how I saved my little brother from our nightmare home life. We were never above middle class in finances. I was 20 at the time and had moved out on my own, which was a blessing considering the situation. My brother and I never had a father in our lives. He left when we were young, so we had to learn how to be men on our own. We taught ourselves how to shave, how to fix things around the house, stuff most kids learn from their dads. Our mother had some serious issues. Over the years, she started becoming more interested in women, which wasn't the problem. The real problem was that she hated all men. If she could spit at every man who walked down the street, she would. Trust me. Her hatred of men meant my brother and I got the worst treatment in the house. In her eyes, we were our father's offspring, so we were just as bad as him. We were reminders of the man she hated. When I finally moved out and got my own place, things got worse for my brother at home. He would call me from the house phone almost every night in tears, telling me what was happening to him. I would ask him how things were going, and he would respond through his sobs that things weren't good. He would explain that our mother had bought new clothes for the girls again, while he got nothing. When I asked about the clothes I had bought him the previous month, he told me that she had taken them away, claiming they were too nice for him. The situation kept escalating. My mother would buy cheap, baggy clothes for my brother while spoiling my sisters with expensive things. She encouraged my sisters to pick on him and torment him. It was like she was punishing him just for being a boy. Then one night, I got a call that broke my heart. My brother was crying harder than usual, begging me to help him. When I asked if he was hurt, he explained that my sisters had held him down and put nail polish all over his face. They were making him look like a clown and laughing at him. When I asked where our mother was during this, he told me that she had been watching and had even given them the nail polish. She had been laughing along with my sisters. I asked if they had hurt him, and he said his arms were sore from being held down. He added that our mother's only concern was to make sure they went outside so they wouldn't get nail polish on the carpets. I was furious. This wasn't just sibling rivalry or teasing. This was abuse, and my mother was encouraging it. I asked her multiple times to let my brother come stay with me, but she refused. I pleaded with her, telling her that he was miserable there and asking if he could stay with me for a while. She responded that he was her son and would stay with her. She warned me not to come to her house or she would call the police. When I pointed out that he was being abused, she told me to mind my own business, reminding me that I had left and should stay away from them. She even threatened to call the police if I came to check on him. I knew I had to do something. That's when I came up with my plan. During the years I lived at home, I knew my mother smoked MJ. I had once found her stash and it was a lot of MJ. Not just a small amount for personal use. We're talking dealer-level quantities. So one night I drove to her neighborhood and called the police. I reported that I was driving by a house that smelled of MJ. Then I parked down the street from our family home and waited. A few minutes later, I heard the sirens. When the officer arrived, he approached my car. He asked if I was the one who called about the MJ smell. I said yes, but added that there was something else he should know. I explained that the woman who lived there was my mother and that she had been abusing my younger brother for years. The officer looked concerned and called for backup, explaining it could turn into a domestic situation. When the second officer arrived, they both approached the house. I couldn't hear the conversation from where I was, but I could see my mother at the door, gesturing and shaking her head. The officers then returned to their vehicles and made some calls. I later found out they were calling for a warrant. About 30 minutes later, they went back to the house with a warrant. This time they went inside. When they came out, my mother was in handcuffs. They had found her stash, and it was even more than I had expected. I approached the house once she was in the police car. My brother was sitting on the porch with one of the officers, looking scared but somehow relieved. My sisters were inside, crying and confused. My brother saw me coming and said in a quiet voice that I had come back. I told him that I would never abandon him. The officer allowed me to talk to my brother, and he explained everything to them, backing up what I had told them about the abuse. The officers took statements from both of us. One officer told us that they would need both of us to come down to the station to make official statements. I asked what would happen to my brother now. The officer explained that Child Protective Services would be involved, and they would look into placing him with a family member if possible. I told the officer that I wanted my brother to live with me, mentioning that I had my own place and a steady job. The officer told me that I would need to discuss that with CPS, but given that I was family and an adult, they would definitely consider it. What followed were weeks of court sessions, meetings with social workers, and paperwork. My mother was charged with child abuse and possession of illegal substances with intent to distribute. The quantity they found was enough to put her away for several years. In the end, I was granted temporary custody of my brother, which eventually became permanent. My sisters were placed in foster care throughout the state. I know that sounds harsh, but they had been so cruel to my brother for so long, encouraged by our mother, that I couldn't bring myself to fight for them too. My priority was my brother. The rest of our family mostly disowned us after this happened. They thought I had betrayed my own mother. Only a couple of aunts and uncles stood by us. Oh, and my mother's girlfriend broke up with her as soon as she was arrested, which didn't surprise me. It's been 5 years now. I'm 25, and my brother is finally smiling again. It's taken a lot of therapy, and he still suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder from the years of abuse. But he goes to a good school now, wears clothes that actually fit him, has friends, and is getting stronger every day, both physically and emotionally. The last time I saw my mother, she was being led away in handcuffs. She told me I would regret this, and that I was just like my father, selfish and cruel. I told her that I was nothing like him because he abandoned us, while I came back to save my brother from her. Those were the last words I ever said to her. We haven't spoken since, and I plan to keep it that way. After dating my ex for almost 2 years, I had reached my breaking point. I should have ended things much sooner, but hindsight is always 20/20. I met him at a friend's party. He was charming, funny, and seemed interested in what I had to say. The first few months were great. We went on fun dates, had deep conversations, and he introduced me to his friends. But slowly I noticed red flags. He would get irritated if I disagreed with him, especially in front of others. He hated being wrong, and over time his reactions became more hostile. I work as a high school history teacher, so accuracy matters to me. My ex worked in finance in Manhattan, commuting from Long Island every day, a 90-minute train ride followed by a subway ride and several blocks of walking. His job required him to be confident and assertive, which I understood, but at home that meant arrogance and an unwillingness to admit when he was wrong. The incident that pushed me over the edge happened during a game night with 2 of his college buddies. We were playing a trivia game in teams, and the losing team had to pay for pizza and beer. These guys could each eat an entire pizza and a six-pack, so the stakes felt high to me, especially since I had the smaller paycheck. During the game, a question about the Civil War came up. My ex said that it started in 1859, looking smug. I politely corrected him, explaining that the Civil War started in 1861, not 1859. I could see his expression change. His friends looked uncomfortable. He asked if I was correcting him, his tone hostile. I explained that I was just trying to get the point for our team and reminded him that I teach American history. He accused me of thinking I was an expert on everything and showing off. His voice got louder. His friend tried to calm things down, suggesting we move on since it was just a game. But my ex wouldn't let it go. After his friends left, he exploded. He yelled that I had made him look like an idiot in front of his friends and called me a sanctimonious C-word. I was shocked. All I'd done was correct a historical date for a game. This wasn't the first time he'd called me terrible names, but it was the worst. I went to bed crying that night, wondering why I stayed in this relationship. The next day, while he was in the shower, his friend texted to apologize for the awkward night. We got talking, and he brought up a story about my ex from high school. He'd once ripped his pants in class, and since his parents both worked in the city, he had to wear basketball shorts from the Lost and Found over his ripped jeans all day. The teasing lasted until graduation. That's when the idea hit me. My ex had been verbally abusing me for months, and I was done taking it. I knew he wore his blue slacks more often than his other work pants. They were several years old, and I had helped him fix a hem a few months earlier. Something going wrong with them wouldn't look suspicious. While he was in the bathroom getting ready for work, I took my sewing kit's seam ripper and undid every third stitch along the seat seam of his blue slacks. Just enough damage that they wouldn't fail right away, but would give way during the day. He got dressed, kissed me goodbye, and left for his long commute to the city. Around lunchtime, my phone rang. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. I answered the phone. He was whispering, saying he needed help because his pants had ripped wide open during his presentation. I asked how that happened. He said the entire seat had given way, and everyone had seen his underwear. He told me he was hiding in the bathroom. I hadn't known he had a presentation that day. I'd just figured the pants would rip when he was at his desk or during lunch. I asked if someone at his office could bring him something to wear. He said no one there was his size, and he couldn't go shopping looking like that. He begged me to bring him pants. Now my ex knew I worked at a school across town and couldn't just leave in the middle of the day. I told him I couldn't leave work because I had classes all afternoon. He asked what he was supposed to do as he couldn't walk around like that. I suggested he wrap his suit jacket around his waist. He asked if I expected him to do that for the rest of the day in a business meeting. I told him I didn't know what else to suggest. Later that afternoon, I got several texts from him describing how humiliating it was to walk around with his jacket tied around his waist, especially since his underwear had visible skid marks. Several co-workers had noticed, and some had made jokes. A week later, I broke up with him. I couldn't take the verbal abuse anymore, and after what I'd done, I knew the relationship was over. He never suspected that I had anything to do with the pants incident. He had already quit his job because he couldn't face his colleagues. A month later, I ran into one of his friends who told me my ex was still upset about the wardrobe malfunction. My ex had been presenting quarterly projections to upper management when he turned around to point at something on the screen, and that's when the entire seat split open. The room went quiet before someone started laughing, and soon everyone was trying not to laugh while my ex stood there, unaware until he felt the draft. Guess I should have just broken up with him instead of seeking revenge. But there's something satisfying about knowing that every time he puts on pants for an important meeting, he probably checks the seams twice.